Class is in session. Welcome to the WUCUSU Class podcast, where best-selling author, educator, community organizer, and empowerment coach Agyei Tyehimba drops 15 to 45 minutes of unapologetic leadership, self-empowerment, and Black political education content every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is where activists sharpen their skills, community leaders get their game tight, and everyday folks learn to wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of Malcolm X. Tap in, take notes, and let's build.
Throughout history, oppressive societies have used very calculated tactics to weaken and sabotage our liberation movements. And today we're going to expose 5 key methods used to keep people subjugated, confused, and prevent them from organizing effectively. So understanding these tactics allows today's activists and organizers to anticipate and counteract them. Number 1 would be demoralizing the public. So when you demoralize someone, you create in them a sense of hopelessness, depression, anxiety, apathy, lack of initiative. This is important because if they can demoralize people, they can stop people from organizing, make them not want to fight back. That's the purpose of demoralization. Probably one of the most important tools that are used to demoralize the public is the media. The media constantly bombards the public with crime reports, economic distress, negative portrayals of Black life, Black people committing fratricide or so-called Black-on-Black violence, homes burning to the ground, people forced into homelessness. They bombard us with this. You turn on the news to get an idea of what's going on in the community, what's going on in the world, and it seems like you're watching one big true crime story. Now, I can give you a few historical or modern examples of demoralization. If you go back to 2005 and Hurricane Katrina, instead of focusing on the government's failure to respond in a timely way to the crisis, media outlets were emphasizing the looting and Black lawlessness, reinforcing this idea that Black people are chaotic, helpless, and pathetic. If you look at crime coverage in the 80s and 90s, the crack epidemic was portrayed as a Black people's problem. People that became prostitutes, the robbery, the violence, fueling despair. Meanwhile, today, there's an opioid crisis affecting mostly white communities, and that's framed as a health crisis, deserving of our compassion and our resources. Present-day examples might include news cycles, economic recessions, international conflicts, keeping people in a state of fear and helplessness. People almost don't want to watch the news because it's so disheartening and demoralizing. Now, how can we counteract this tactic? Well, certainly, I think it always helps to have independent Black media outlets that highlight success stories, community organizing victories, or that provide historical examples of resilience, that emphasize mental health and self-care as part of activism. And when I say these independent Black media outlets, I don't just mean that you got to have a building with a huge satellite that's a news building. We're in the digital age. So you can have YouTube channels. You can have podcasts like this. We have a YouTube channel at Harlem Liberation School. You also have Do the Knowledge Radio. You have the Facts program. You have Black Liberation Media. So there's all types of outlets that provide our news in a critical, analytical way, give you type of information that's relevant and useful to you understanding how to navigate in the world. But they do it in a way where you don't leave the broadcast wanting to cry and curl up in a corner and do nothing all day. They energize you rather than demoralize you. A second tactic that oppressive societies use is what we would call fear-mongering. Now, fear is used to discourage people from protesting, from speaking out. Some of the tools that are used for fear-mongering are very obvious. Obviously, the media, labeling activists, organizational leaders, or certain organizations as threats, as Black identity extremists, as terrorists, as being hyper-violent or a threat to public safety, violent policing of our protests and our activist gatherings. You're having a meeting in your organization and the police come busting in the building where you're having the organization. Or as college students are organizing at their college, and here come the police with riot gear that just doing too much, overreacting to the situation, trying to induce fear. The goal is that next time you're prepared to protest, you may not come out to the protest because you had such a horrific experience. You got beaten up. They might have thrown you in jail for a night or two. All this is done to create fear so you don't continue your activism. Naturally, you have quite a few examples. Historically, we have COINTELPRO, the FBI's counterintelligence program. If you look at the war on the Black Panther Party, the FBI labeled the Panthers a domestic terrorist group, despite the fact that the Black Panther Party had free breakfast for children, were creating schools for children, were providing groceries for community members, were taking elders to medical clinics. So despite all that, what they focused on was the shootouts with police, of course, and things of that nature, and the fact that they carried arms and trained in arms. And it created fear. So now when people in the black community hear there's a Black Panther meeting, some people are like, oh, I don't want to go. Ain't that group we went all black and shooting up every place? Ain't that them crazy black people that be carrying guns? See how they do that? Fear mongering, right? To create a separation between the people and the organizations and individuals fighting on their behalf. Interestingly, while the FBI and their different forms of television and news media were depicting the Black Panthers as being violent, the Chicago police, working in conjunction with the FBI, that infiltrated the Black Panther Party branch in Chicago, murdered Fred Hampton as he slept in his apartment in 1969. In 2020, the crackdown on the George Floyd protests. George Floyd was the brother that eventually was killed by a white police officer who, in subduing him, had his knee on his neck. This outraged the black community, and people came out in the streets, and when they came out in the streets, they were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, mass arrests, very rough, unnecessarily rough. White civilians decided on January 6, 2020, to try to take over the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. They had a full-scale riot. People climbing over fences, breaking into Congress people's offices, threatening the people on guard duty there. I think there were a few deaths, and they were treated with far more restraint. Tactic number 3, revising, sanitizing, or erasing history. The point of this is to keep the public ignorant of past liberation movements, to prevent people from learning about effective resistance strategies, things people did in the past that were successful or unsuccessful. By revising and erasing history, people are robbed of the lesson. Some of the key ways they do this is they remove important people and important events from the school curricula. I know that our organization, Harlem Liberation School, had to actually go to a particular Bronx middle school and have this white principal removed from that school. We had to have a whole campaign because she was telling the teachers they couldn't teach black history. Another thing they do, they have politicians who use legislation to prohibit the teaching of what they would call ethnic studies. I should also say that sometimes elements of our history are taught in schools, but it's distorted. So it's one thing to erase history, to say we're not teaching this. And then it's another thing to kind of revise it. We call that revisionist history. So you talk about Dr. King and all you show is his I Have a Dream speech. You don't talk about his speech where he is decrying the Vietnam War. And he's giving as his reasoning that it's based on class, it's racist, it's imperialist, right? He's raising all these issues. They don't talk about that speech. They want people to see King. He was just a really nice, nonviolent preacher. And he led a bus boycott. You know what I'm saying? He got arrested a few times. He helped Rosa Parks stay in her seat on the bus. This is what they teach. That he was kind of a soft, lukewarm, pie-in-the-sky preacher. when the truth is Martin Luther King was a ferocious warrior against racial apartheid, which we then called Jim Crow. Separate but so-called equal facilities for blacks and whites. Black people got to drink out dirty water fountains, go to the back dirty stank parts of the movie theater, and have schools all black where the teachers are underpaid, undersupported, where they don't have proper facilities, books are old and outdated. They don't tell you that Dr. King was considered a great threat. That's why they bombed his house, family. That's why he was arrested over 35 times, family. And ultimately, that's why he was killed. So even when they give you the history they give you is often distorted, inaccurate, and sanitized. It's not the type of history that's going to inspire young people to raise the critical questions that's going to lead them to get involved in community organizing and social justice type of activism. To my podcast family, if you're finding value in this podcast, if it's inspiring, educating, and empowering you, consider supporting the work. Your contributions help keep this platform going strong, bringing you knowledge and motivation for the journey ahead. You can send your support via Cash App to $TRUSELF, followed by the numbers 143. Every dollar helps us continue spreading the message of empowerment, leadership, and liberation. Thank you. Either they don't give you the history at all, or they give you the history, but they revise it in such a way that you don't get what you need to get from it. So all these kids going around thinking that slavery was a great thing for black people and don't get all of the hostility and the brutality and the abuse and the economic exploitation and the fact that these enslaved Africans, for all intents and purposes, really helped build the infrastructure of this country and didn't get, in many cases, a dime for it. Now, how do we counteract this tactic of erasing or distorting our history? One thing we do is we create and we support independent black history programs, community schools, African-centered curriculum, grassroots education initiatives, and if I may be a tad bit self-serving here, places like Harlem Liberation School that teach the real history, that teach what actually happened and in whose interest it happened and who was impacted by it happening and who fought back when it was happening, right? Another way to counteract this tactic is something that I don't see enough that is very important. We have amongst us walking encyclopedias. They're called our elders. These are people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe even 100 years old, who are part of a civil rights organization during the civil rights movement, who were part of the Black Power movement, and that are more than willing to share with you their perspectives and their experiences, that oral history. Today we have smartphones. You could pull out your smartphone at any time and interview your auntie, your grandma, your grandpa, your uncles, your parents, to preserve our oral histories from elders and survivors of past struggles. Tactic number 4, character assassination. By character assassination, what I mean is discrediting the activists and the leaders, making it seem like the organizations fighting for you, the leaders that run them, are incompetent, are charlatans, are impulsive, are womanizers. All of these different things, making it difficult for our community members to trust the leadership and their organizations. And if they don't trust them, it means they won't support them. If they don't support them, it means we have organizations that are doing nothing. Now, when we talk about the tools that are used for character assassination, well, that's media smear campaigns. That could be through newspaper articles. That could be through television, so-called exposés. That could be through legal harassment. When they kept arresting Martin Luther King 30-something times, it's to harass him, but it's also to make it look in the newspaper like this guy is a criminal. Why is he always getting arrested, right? That's how it's supposed to play to the public. For historical examples, if you look at in the 1920s, you look at Marcus Garvey and his Universal Negro Improvement Association that he established in Harlem, where I'm from. The FBI's J. Edgar Hoover targeted Garvey with surveillance, They were going through his mail, intercepting his mail and everything. They had informants that they had planted in his organization, reporting back to them on Garvey's activities, lying on him. They created bogus mail fraud charges, and those charges of mail fraud they actually used to get him arrested and eventually to deport him back to Jamaica, family. The last tactic, remember, I'm just giving you 5. There are plenty more tactics, but these are 5 general tactics that oppressive systems, governments use to sabotage our liberation movements. Tactic number 5 is promoting reactionary or self-defeating standards and values. Oppressive systems push cultural messages that glorify things like violence against each other, materialism, that a person is only valuable to the extent that they pay our bills, give us money, buy us gifts. This idea that it's all about do what you want to do, live your best life, do you. There's a lot of messages you hear. The individual is all important, even if that individual is causing great harm to our community. Yeah, they may be selling drugs, but they doing it. They may run a ruthless, environmentally destructive corporation that's destroying the environment, releasing toxins in the air, selling genetically modified foods that is giving us cancer, but they doing it. Look at their car. Yeah, we've all been guilty, I'm sure of that. So-and-so is a murderer in our community, but he gave all this money to this institution. Fight with each other over anything. Be ready to kill and shoot and stab each other. But now when police come beating up grandma, when some predator comes trying to abduct black women or black girls, do nothing. Now you the most peaceful thing on the block. Those are values that are taught to us. And obviously you can anticipate the tools that do this. Music, movies, social media, celebrity culture reinforce these type of harmful messages. What we're talking about here is culture, family. Culture is not just things like, in elementary school they taught you culture is like, your food, your clothes, your language. And those things are part of culture. But culture is the totality of your existence. Culture is not just the music you like, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, the language you speak. Culture are the holidays, the important people that you idolize, the special events you commemorate, right? Your customs, your traditions, right? The roles you have in your family. Who does what and why, and who's respected in your culture and who's not. What are you prepared to sacrifice for? What are you prepared to live for, die for, maybe even kill for? What do you see as sacred? What do you see as not important and trivial? What are your priorities? What are your values? In your culture, are elders respected or are they dismissed as useless trash? In your culture, are animals and vegetation, is that respected or is like, whatever? In your culture, are women seen as being peers to men or are they seen as being underneath men in importance and value? All of those questions are cultural questions. And the point here is that these oppressive systems push cultural messages that get us to support, embody, promote, and participate in some of the worst behavior known to man, some of us. I want you to look at the 80s. Look at hip-hop, my beloved genre of music that we call hip-hop. In the 80s, the golden era, you had artists like Public Enemy Number One, KRS-One, Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubian, X-Clan, all of whom promoted black consciousness, some more than others. And even the ones that didn't promote black consciousness, they weren't necessarily promoting very negative messages, not too many of them at least. Now, by the 1990s, the mainstream labels that once shunned hip-hop, now they say, wow, hip-hop is viable. Hip hop is a lucrative form of music. We got to get behind it and make money from it. They started to glorify things like gang violence and drug dealing and materialism. Man, you know what? Forget the community. You do for self. You make sure you good. And I remember, though NWA is seen as a classic hip hop group now, and they are, but I remember being one of many people back in the day when we first heard this name NWA and heard what it meant. We was like, nah, man. What's up with that N-word? You referring to yourself as the N-word? Come on, man. We got to do better than that. We were critical of that. But you saw it. They had NWA. They had hoes with attitudes, bees with problems. These are real groups, family. The messages became messages about using drugs, selling drugs, gang rape of women, the objectification of women with nothing but bodies to have sex with or to exploit. At this time, the more politically conscious rappers, people like Dead Prez, KRS, Immortal Technique, they pushed them to the margins. They pushed them to the back. These are the record labels, by the way. They didn't want those type of messages coming out to our people. They wanted instead the messages of being sexist, patriarchal, being hyper-violent, hypersexual. Even you had some pedophilia was coming out in some of this music. I'm not even going to quote some lines, family, but some of your favorite songs by your favorite artists, some of them have straight up pedophilia right in the lyrics. They wanted to promote that, knowing that that would culturally destroy us. It would have us become self-defeating. We going out bragging how much money we spent for some designer bag, boots, whatever it is. Now we ain't building no economic wealth. Because our economic wealth, 80% of it is going to people who absolutely cannot stand us. But that's a cultural value that's pushed through the music. White people back in the day call that conspicuous consumption. Buying huge, gaudy jewelry and all this stuff so that as a form of status for people who feel they are nothing, have nothing, and can be nothing. So what substitutes for that are things that make us feel like we're somebody. Biggie told you, heartthrob never, black and ugly as ever. However, I stay coochie down to the socks. He's associating his dark complexion with him being ugly. But he says, but it's okay that I'm black and ugly, because I got this status symbol of this white designer brand that I wear that gives me my value. You see, that type of stuff. If you look at things like reality TV, shows and influencers, they promote the hyper-consumerism, the individualism, self-destruction instead of community uplift. Love and hip-hop glorifies conflict, toxic relationships, drama, reducing the black culture to just one big web of pathology and dysfunction. Somebody's always upset, always arguing, want to fighting on the camera, throwing drinks. I mean, it's ridiculous. Or things like Bad Girls Club, that encourage violent, reckless behavior amongst the sisters, while presenting it as, oh, this is funny, this is cool, let's go see who's going to fight this week. So we have to create media that challenges those narratives. We should teach people how to critically think. We should teach people about being literate in terms of media so they can recognize harmful narratives. Help them develop a sense of somebodyness. Help them know they're connected to something much greater and more powerful and more beautiful than any shoe, pants, dress, house, or car. And that if we connect to that source and force, we can get the car, the house, or whatever we want without hurting ourselves or hurting anyone else. Also, I would say to start identifying artists, influencers, celebrities who push some negative messages, and we need to reach out to them. I don't mean in a menacing way. I mean, we need to say, yo, that's not cool, bro. You talk about the women like that. Don't you have a mama or sisters or daughters? Like, would you want people talking to them that way? We need to have real conversations with these people and work on them to politically educate them, to culturally educate them, to spiritually edify them, so that maybe some of them will turn the corner and transform themselves and stop being cultural community predators. We also need to elevate and engage and support the artists and influencers who push messages of black unity, resistance, collective progress, pride, and positive culture. So, in conclusion, we will review the 5 tactics that systems use to destabilize liberation movements are demoralization, fear-mongering, historical erasure, character assassination, and promoting reactionary and self-defeating values. So with that said, stay strong, stay conscious, stay committed to your liberation individually and collectively. And we will see you next time, family, on WUCUSU Class. Peace and blessings.